watching a special presentation of the Outdoor Life Network.
6 days into the Vuelta Espana, an unknown rider called Isidro Nozal raced to victory in the time trial. He was a shaky leader. He then strengthened his grip in the Pyrenean Mountains. And yesterday in Albacete, Nozal added his second time trial win to become a very solid golden jersey. With more than a week to go to Madrid, Nozal, who has led the race for 10 days, now has an advantage of over 3 minutes. And today, the sprinters should return to centre stage as the Vuelta continues next on OLN. And welcome back to the Vuelta Espana, the 14th day of the race now. We say goodbye to Albacete and the scene of the big time trial yesterday as we head now towards the next town at Valdepeñas. Hello again, everybody, and welcome back. I'm Phil Liggett, joined, of course, by Paul Sherwen and by Bob Roll, and with the news that retiring after 90 kilometres today, last year's winner. Aitor Gonzalez has decided to call it a day. He's never felt at home this year in any major stage race, and just like in the Tour de France, he is out. And there's only one previous winner left in the Tour now, Roberto Heras. And looking at the Pacific Life overall classification, Heras enjoyed his time trial yesterday, coming into third place in the overall behind Isidro Nozal, who in turn won that and is 3:03 ahead of Gonzalez de Galliano, his team captain. Beltran slipped a little to fourth, and Francisco Mancebo very consistent there in fifth place. A bit further down, Valverde still very much in the show. Luis Perez getting what could be his finest ever finish. He's now 8th in the race. Frigo dropped away from the leaderboard a couple of days ago and did nothing to regain it yesterday. And Unai Osa in 10th. Of the American riders, it's George Hincapie flying high amongst the top 5 Americans in the race, the only 5 Americans in the race. Floyd Landis had a very good ride yesterday and he's now 58th. Levi Leipheimer, also a great ride yesterday. He's up there to 85th. With Julieta Rodriguez, the other 2 riders on the result standing there. Now, the man, of course, who is enjoying this tour more than anybody else is the leader, Isidro Nozal. Bob, he doesn't make any mistakes.
Well, he's taken a lot of baby steps towards overall victory, keeping the golden jersey for a long time. But yesterday, in the 53.3 kilometer time trial, he took a giant step towards overall victory. He swept away all of his rivals that were anywhere near him on GC, beating the second place rider, his own teammate, Igor Gonzalez de Galliano, by over a minute in this very, very difficult, flat time trial. You got to hand it to Isidro Nozal. He's proving to be every measure of that golden jersey. He really wants it. He was overcome by emotion after the finish line, and I think he shed a few tears there on the line when he realized he had done such a good ride, and he's very happy. You could see it on the podium to defend that jersey and even to clobber everybody. So yeah. Isidro Nozal looks fantastic. He's a new star of Spanish cycling.
All right, and Gonzalez de Galliano now saying he is the undisputed team leader, and that's Nozal I'm referring to, of course. What about Roberto Heras? Because we somehow expected Nozal to do that sort of a ride, but Heras really rose to the occasion.
Well, the day before yesterday, when you saw the U.S. Postal Team so serious about trying to keep after the race, they blew it apart in the crosswinds. Roberto Heras went out on a raid of his own yesterday, finishing 7th in a dead-flat 53-kilometer time trial. I don't think he's ever produced a ride like that in a flat time trial in his career. He was just a little bit behind De Galliano. He lost a minute plus to Nozal, but a fabulous ride by Roberto Heras to keep himself competitive for the overall. If he can get some time back in the next 2 big mountain stages we have tomorrow and then the day after the rest day all the way up the Sierra Nevada, I think we could have a real barn burner on our hands here as we get closer to Madrid. This race is not over at all. A great ride by Roberto Heras in the individual time trial.
Okay, now tomorrow we go up the Pandera. Last year Heras was the winner there, Paul. He's not out of this race yet.
Well, he's not Bob's taken all the wind out of my sails, because I was actually just going to say that. Roberto Heras is certainly not out of this bike race, but if you look back to the result from last year on the Pandera, in fact, Roberto Heras won the stage. He beat Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano by 5.5 minutes and Yoshiba Bolocki by 1.5 minutes. If he can do that kind of damage on the Pandera, do the same thing when we go up to the summit of Sierra Nevada, he is back in the bike race, and with a hill mountain time trial to finish, this could be a very exciting final weekend.
Nozal, by the way, didn't ride last year, so we don't know how he's going to tackle the Pandera, but I know they'll certainly attack him. Now, one big loser over the last 2 days, and I thought he was going to be a podium finish in Madrid, Dario Frigo.
Bit of a surprise, because in fact Dario Frigo was saying he was really enjoying the Vuelta a Espana. Well, I don't think he enjoyed the individual time trial yesterday. He slumped just as his teammate did as well, Aitor Gonzalez. Gonzalez now out of the Vuelta a Espana, but still I think Dario Frigo will do something special before we get to the end of this bike race, because he's a really good contender when it comes to the big 3-week bike races. And as I think Bob will agree with me, this bike race so far is a long way from finishing. It's a long road up to Madrid.
All right, well, just before we go to the pictures, there is a breakaway of 5 about to be caught by the peloton, who are once again absolutely flying today. The reason being, we're travelling in a westerly direction and we are picking up a tremendous tailwind. Over 51 kilometres covered in the first hour today on the road to Valdepeñas. No hills at all, although this is a beautiful exposed road. Nice gentle undulations today. Just 3 sprints. We've been to the one at Ridera, and we're moving on towards Carazota at the moment. But as I say, the riders are going quickly, and here is the end of the breakaway as we speak. I think this is Benoit Joachim, who is in the break along with Moreni, Carlos Garcia, Fabrizio Guidi and Giovanni Lombardi. They had a lead of 3 minutes and 5 seconds. They're taking it easy because they're about to be wound in. Now, there have been changes, of course, on our number of riders. We're down to 165 now of the 198, and 7 of the 22 teams are now all that's left intact. Losing Aitor Gonzalez today, the first man in the Fassa Bortolo. And 2 riders giving up so far over the weekend. Yesterday not starting the time trial, and we didn't know at the time, was Angel Casero, another winner of the Tour. We lost 2 winners in 2 days. Peter Falazan in Cofidis, and moments ago we lost Aitor Gonzalez as well. So that's brought you right up to date, and you couldn't join us at a better time, because I think I can almost say the race is all together.
Pretty much back together again, Phil. This leading group of 5 who are almost about to get caught got away very early on. 51 kilometres covered in the first hour of racing. Benoit Joachim, there you can see in that group as well, was Giovanni Lombardi, an Italian who lives in Spain. He lives right in the heart of Madrid. Wanted to win himself a stage here this afternoon, but as you can see, looking down here on the whole of the main field, everybody in the Vuelta a Espana is right there right now.
And that's the champion of Luxembourg there, slipping back into the main field, as they now are all together, and everything, as they say, to race for. They are absolutely flying, although they don't look it at the moment. I can tell you we are going to arrive early. Anyway, we'll take our first break and come back and join us for all of the action. We're looking down on the peloton all together now on this 14th stage of the Tour of Spain, from Albacete to Valdepeñas. 56 kilometres to go, and we're now getting a change of direction. And we all know what happens in these Tours of Spain up here, Paul. When you get a change of direction, the wind usually changes too.
All those guys getting caught at the back there. There's almost a traffic jam to get round the corner. There was an acceleration just a moment ago, and it came from the Domino Vacanze team, who moved straight to the front to pick up the pacemaking. The main field had slowed down somewhat for 15 or 20 kilometres, but this has been a very rapid pace since the start. In fact, the first hour of racing was covered at 51.3 kilometres an hour, and the second racing hour was in fact almost as fast at 47 kilometres an hour as well. As we look now at this main field being stretched out into a very big long line.
Yes, and this is the big danger. They've covered 99 kilometres in the first 2 hours again today. We went through the first sprint after 95 kilometres, reached in less than 2 hours, and Christian Moreni ahead of Guidi and Carlos Garcia 5 riders in the lead at this point, but the chase was already on and they've been swept up. But again, Bob, once you change direction, the place not to be is at the back of this peloton.
Absolutely not. You can see gaps starting to open up there now. Big George Hincapie right on the front started moving it over into the gutter where there's absolutely no shelter from the crosswinds. You can see that gap opening up like we had just a couple days ago before the time trial, all because of U.S. Postal. Domina Vacanze read the change in direction. So did Postal. Suddenly they all came to the front of the peloton, and now these guys are going to be struggling unless the wind shuts down a little bit or the road curves back around to the rider's left, and then they'll get more of a head or a direct tailwind. But now they're opening up a second echelon. They're going flat out again. U.S. Postal, like we said before, still very much in the hunt.
I tell
for
you
the
what,
overall.
I believe that, again, Brunel has used his knowledge of Spain here, because he was on the radio to Floyd Landis, because just before they got to this corner, there was an obvious acceleration by U.S. Postal.
Yes, absolutely. Now they're rolling it over into the gutter. We'll have to see where the Once team is. Don't see any of their riders at the front right now. And if they've cut out behind, then you'll see a furious chase to get back on terms with the Postal team. But they are racing very hard. Right when the road changed directions, just like a race in Belgium, like one of the semi-classics in the spring, they're using the wind as much to their advantage as they use the mountains. It's beautiful to see this kind of racing.
Levi Leipheimer, by the way, and Bobby Julich, George Hincapie, Floyd Landis, all part of the American selection for the World Championships announced overnight. As we're looking now at the peloton, trying to get rid of a big chunk of riders here. Well, one man they won't have caught in at the back end of the group, if you're just joining us, is Aitor Gonzalez, like they did 48 hours ago, because he retired soon after passing through the feeding station. And we now have only one previous winner, because we've lost Angel Tercero, Aitor Gonzalez and Alex Zula, the only other previous winners over the last few days.
I tell you what, though, I think the majority of riders at the top end of the overall classification keeping a very close eye on this weather condition, because they knew something was going to happen. And it looks as if maybe Carlos Sastre got caught out there in this second group. And the most important thing, as Bob says, on these flat stages is to be attentive all of the time to any slight change in weather directions. And one thing that a lot of the team managers do in the morning, they actually draw out the race route on the small detailed maps that you can get here in Europe, and that way they can see just exactly what part of the road might cause a danger from these crosswinds.
The interesting thing is the front pack there is all huddled together for warmth. It is, by the way, a beautiful day today. It is very, very warm indeed, about 87 degrees Fahrenheit, which at this time of the year is exceptional racing conditions, but it's the wind again doing the damage, and it has affected the Tour of Spain ever since the off, really, and those first couple of days of rain that we had in the far north. They're all way behind us now. Brief glimpse there of Nozal. Guess where he is? Right at the front of the front bunch. That man never makes any tactical errors, and will no doubt be thinking of his next big challenge, which will be, of course, tomorrow when we go back into the mountains. And so don't miss our program tomorrow. Same day coverage again at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll give you 90 minutes of all of the best action of tomorrow's stage, which finishes at the top of the Pandera climb. And that is where Heras has really got to hit Nozal if he's hoping for any chance of winning this race for a second time by the time we get to Madrid. Now, as we rejoin the action, it looks, Bob, as though they've just linked up there.
It looks like the second group has closed the gap. You could see them grouped in the front all the way across the road. Unless they're flat out in the gutter, it means the pace has come down a little bit, so the riders that were momentarily dropped there were able to come back. But at this point, you want to move right into the front line of riders to avoid that from happening again, especially if you have any GC ambitions. Some of the riders, obviously, in the back do not. They've already lost too much time to be an overall contender, so not quite as attentive at the front. Isidro Nozal, for his part, was right there when the move came. He was ready for it. Didn't even miss the split there, so didn't have to chase at all. And the day before the time trial, he was really benefited from the efforts of the U.S. Postal team because of that, because he was right there in the front line, and the Once riders didn't have to do any work in that desperate crosswind battle the day before the time trial. Frigo and Gonzalez had to do the brunt of the chase by themselves. That took a lot of the energy out of their legs for the time trial the next day, and we saw them way down the leaderboard. When we expected them to do a good ride, they were nowhere on the charts.
Looking down at the whole pack as they race across a scorched scenery here, the end of a long, hot summer in Spain, and the riders now on the undulations of the day, racing at very high speed to the finish. Remember, 99 kilometers covered in 2 hours. It won't be long. We'll take a break. And welcome back as the Tour of Spain literally races into the last 45 kilometres. They again head towards the finish of a stage on race record average speed. This Tour of Spain looks set to be rather now the fastest of them all. Well, we went through the sprint at Carrizosa after 117 kilometres. This is what happened. It brought out the big boys in search of the points. Alessandro Petacchi beating Eric Zabel and Fred Rodriguez. Well, Zabel keeps that polka dot points jersey, but he lost a couple of points by virtue of losing the sprint there to Petacchi. There's the confirmation of that. 4 points for Petacchi, 2 Zabel, 1 for Fred, and so a little bit of closing of the gaps there. The overall situation now has changed. I think we can show you that as well. Yes, 114 for Zabel, 105 for Petacchi. And as Paul Sherwen pointed out, I think they're trying to get some points before the mountains tomorrow because Nozal is still a threat.
Yeah, well, in the points competition at the Tour of Spain, unlike in the Tour de France, where the points are actually weighted towards the flatter stages, in the Tour of Spain it's the same number of points for either a flat stage, a time trial stage, or a mountain stage, and that is why it's very important. And I think that's one reason why the sprinters try and get as many points as they can, even in the intermediary sprint points here at the Vuelta a Espana.
Just gone away, Bob, a couple of riders, and they've broken clear of the field. Pedro Diaz, it's the third day straight on the road racing stage. He's been out an attempt to break away, and with him there, Oscar Laguna.
Oscar Laguna has been in almost every breakaway so far in the Vuelta a España, and he just keeps trying. La Barca and Relax, probably the two smallest, least fancy team in the whole roster of teams in the Vuelta a España, but no less competitive than anybody else. And these riders don't have a furiously fast sprinter on the team, so they need to go out, break away, and try to steal some time and hold on to the finish. So that's why you see such a competitive stage race here and lots of attacks. It makes the Vuelta very exciting racing.
Well, as we look at the two leaders out front, they're trying to build up over the rest of the field, and they're making some progress. 26 seconds is the gap at the moment. Now, remember tonight, as OLN is the home to the PBR, the Top Cowboys will clash with, of course, those 2,000-pound beasts, the Bulls. And so try and stay on the back of those for 8 seconds. That's tonight and tomorrow here on OLN at 8 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. So often on stage of the Tour of Spain, when there are no mountains, then you get these long straight roads and crosswinds, which does affect the race. In many ways, Paul, it makes a much more exciting race than the Tour de France.
Well, it's on these stages where the wind is very much a factor that we've seen some of the big time differences happen, and we saw that just a couple of days ago before the individual time trial, when two big pre-race favourites, Dario Frigo and Aitor Gonzalez, got caught out with 40 kilometres to go. That's why the leaders, the men who want to win this bike race, have got to be so attentive on every individual stage. And this race has also been made that little bit more difficult, Phil, by the fact that the stages on average are a lot shorter than the stages we had at the Tour de France and the Giro d'Italia. The average length of those stages was 160 kilometres. Here, the average stage of a Vuelta a España stage is a 140 kilometre stage, which is just outside of 95 miles. And I tell you what, it really does make for aggressive racing. And I think it's reflected in the fact that the Tour of Spain has been very brave in shortening the distance of its actual event.
Yes, you can see from that graphic, on average about 12 miles a day shorter than the other two big tours, Giro d'Italia, Tour de France, and it makes for a fast, exciting race as the riders looking forward to a crack at the World Championship, which is the next major event on the calendar in October, along with the last couple of events in the World Cup competition as well. So the field goes on, coursing its way towards the finish, and there is still about 45 kilometres to go, so we'll take a break. And welcome back. You can see by the shape of the peloton here, and with only 36 kilometres left to run, that they are again demonstrating a very high-speed race, Bob.
They are going up the breakaway that Laguna Diaz-Lobato established a little while ago. The gap now at 48 seconds. One gets a feeling, however, the peloton can take them back at any moment that they'd like to. We've seen Fossa Bortolo very active on the front of the bike race. One little acceleration from U.S. Postal, splitting the field. One shudders to think what will happen if they put the hammer down in a crosswind battle when they go right to the gutter. Very hard for everyone in the group to maintain that tempo, and we saw big gaps open up. I think it seems like the wind might not be quite as dramatic in the crosswinds. We haven't seen any racing like that so far today, except for one section when the course did a little jog back against the other against itself into a big crosswind, and in about 100 yards there was already a split in the field. So they might be waiting for that, but it seems as if Fossa Bortolo has good control of the bike race so far, and Onse's been at the front a lot also.
Well, the majority of the wind today has actually been a cross tailwind, so that's been fairly advantageous for these riders. And it is turning out to be very hot in this part of Spain as well, up into around about 30 degrees Celsius, which is not far off 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And again, Phil, it's been a very fast stage. 51 kilometers covered in the first hour, 47 kilometers covered in the second hour, and we're actually setting up for the moment for possibly the fastest ever Tour of Spain in history. The fastest was a couple of years ago at 42.5 kilometers an hour, and I've got down the average speed up until yesterday was 42.938. So really just goes to show these guys are really hammering along on every individual stage. It'll get slowed down a little bit by the two big mountain stages to come, but certainly the Tour of Spain is a very quick race when you look at it compared to all the other three Grand Tours.
Well, it most certainly is, and there's some interesting facts for you. Linking up the three Grand Tours, Eddie Merckx has won a total of 65 stages, 25 in the Giro, 34 in the Tour, 6 in the Vuelta. He only rode the Vuelta on one occasion. Cipollini isn't bad, is it? 57 for him, because he's got 42, which is an outstanding record in the Giro d'Italia. I'm sure you saw that with us here on OLN earlier this year when he finished that total off. 12 in the Tour de France, no chance to add to that for the last couple of years because they don't let him ride it anymore. And the Vuelta, where he's grabbed 3 stage wins. Didn't give himself much of a shot this time, Bob, did he? He left after 30 kilometres.
He did the team time trial just so the Domina Vacanze team would be allowed to start the race. The promoters of the Vuelta said they would kick Domina Vacanze out if Cipollini didn't show up. They had been promised by Domina Vacanze that if they rode the Vuelta, Cipollini would be part of the squad, so the organizers of the Vuelta insisting that they bring Cipollini along. He only rode the first 30 Ks with his teammates in the team time trial before going home. The other riders, however, have been very competitive for the Domina Vacanze team. A lot of breakaways. They've been doing good in the mountains. So that's a very strong squad apart from Mario Cipollini. But he does have all the pressure of being such a big winner in the sport of cycling. Everybody wants to see him.
Well, Cipollini, the record holder, Phil, for stage victories at the Giro d'Italia, and Eddie Merckx, the record holder for stage victories at the Tour de France. But here, there's a big battle going on for supremacy between two sprinters, Eric Zabel and Alessandro Petacchi, and look at the total between those two riders, just separated by 1 victory. Zabel has no stage wins to his credit in the Giro, but 12 at the Tour de France and 5 at the Vuelta. But Alessandro Petacchi, with this magnificent season he's had so far, 4 wins at the Giro, 6 wins at the Tour and 6 at the Vuelta. In fact, I think it should be the other way around, 6 at the Giro and 4 at the Vuelta, but still the total's the same. And he'll be looking today to try and equalise that total with Eric Zabel if he can, with a win at the end of this afternoon's stage.
Well, we'll wait and see. Their overall wins, of course. Well, as we look now at the field coursing its way gently but very swiftly towards the end of the stage, they're going to play right into the hands of Alessandro Petacchi and Eric Zabel if they don't try to work out a different type of finish. Giovanni Lombardi was a long way in a breakaway today. It may have hurt him a little bit, but when you take a look at that road, you can only wish the two in front the best of luck. It's not very appealing, is it? We'll take another break. Welcome back inside. 20 miles to go to the finish now, and the teammates here, the Petacchi starting to come through. This will be De Los Angeles on the front now, and the teammates also of La Barca also coming through there, and also Gonzalez de Galdiano and the boys. Now they're just keeping very fast tempo here. They've yet to tame the two riders who've broken away, Pedro Diaz and Oscar Laguna. They've been away now for something like 14 kilometres, but one feels they haven't escaped yet.
It seems like they need a lot more time than that, especially when you consider here's a little replay of a beautiful little bird.
That's a skylark, I think.
Cruising right along with the helicopter
partridge
there. Making quite a good pace there.
Surprised he made it, knowing how they enjoy hunting in Spain, but he's coming back down sharply. Somebody's reminded me it might be the Eagle of Toledo, because that was a man by the name of Federico Badamontes, Bob.
Federico Badamontes, one of the great climbers in the history of the Tour de France. I believe he won the King of the Mountains competition 6 times. An interesting story. Lucien Van Impe had also tied his record, but he had admired his efforts so much as a climber, he didn't try to beat his record. A little bit of honor amongst thieves there coming into the mind of the Belgian great climber Lucien Van Impe, but indeed the Eagle of Toledo was Federico Badamontes, who, by the way, looks almost the same today as he did in the 50s when he was a great cycling champion.
And we can't say the same about you, though, Bob.
No, absolutely not.
Not with that haircut, anyway.
I looked horrible in the 50s anyway, so.
I should imagine. I can't think you were ever there in the 50s, but still.
Not quite, but almost.
Paul, we caught a glimpse of Isidro Nozal. This is going to be, if all goes well, something like a day off for him today, because there's no point in attacking him. The wind, although it's coming in from the southwest, is not really doing much damage, is it?
Well, not really. He's probably trying to recuperate as many of his forces as he can for tomorrow, because he knows tomorrow is going to be a very important day for him. The 2 leaders right now, they're not really any threat at all to the overall bike race, because Oscar Laguna is 2 hours and 2 minutes behind Isidro Nozal in the overall classification, and Pedro Diaz Lobato is 2 hours 17 minutes behind. But I think what we're seeing here is the sprinters want to have their day again, and obviously it'll be a 2-pronged attack, Pataki against Zabel. But watch out for Freddie Rodriguez, because he seems to be improving, Bob, over the last couple of days, and he's always been up there, and he was, let's not forget, 3rd in that last sprint point at Carrizosa at 118 kilometers covered today.
Well, he had a great season last year, struggled a little bit this year so far, but he's finally coming into form. Freddie Rodriguez is the type of sprinter who can get over the climbs in good order as well, so he might be building up for a big race in Hamilton, Canada for the World Championships, and it would be wonderful to see Freddie up there doing the Worlds just across the northern border of the United States and Canada in the town of Hamilton.
It's remarkable, this young man here in the golden jersey. He doesn't really seem to be suffering at all from the pressure of leading the bike race, although yesterday he did break down into tears after that incredible performance in the individual time trial, where not only did he win the stage but extended his advantage over everybody else in the bike race. And as we were talking, Bob and I, just a little bit earlier, it just goes to prove that big man still can cry.
Absolutely, but of course the pressure is really on, and he's now finding he's got the full pressure as leader of the Giro for the retiring Onthe team from the sport. Big moment for them. Now, don't forget, if you do miss any of the stages of the Vuelta, you can always catch up with them in our magazine programme, Summer Sports Zone, which comes to you every Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern and Pacific, when we'll cover all aspects of road cycling, mountain biking, domestic and international, and all the results as well. That's Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. It looks as though Pedro Diaz has been a very good attacking rider these past 3 or 4 days. Has called for a drink and he's got it, and now they're getting on with the race. But these roads here, Bob, they're not conducive to a breakaway, are they?
No, absolutely not. The Paternina rider, Diaz Lopez, getting a bottle of Coke there. It's going to be a little bit hard to unscrew the cap and drink it very quickly. I guess the Shimano neutral support car didn't have enough water bottles, or maybe have given them out. It's a very warm day, and so they're down to the actual soda pop bottles. But they haven't allowed the team cars to get through because the gap is hovering right around 40 seconds. So you have to go to the neutral support car, which is sponsored by Shimano here in the Vuelta a Espana. They follow all the breakaways until the team cars can come through. But I don't think that's going to happen today, because both Fossa Bortolo and Once very attentive at the front of the bike race, not giving them very much space at all as we get close to the finish.
Yeah, just to clarify that rule, the managers and the team cars can't go forward until the leaders have a gap of 1 minute over the field. Until then, they're looked after by a neutral service car, sponsored in this case by Shimano, and those riders will be able to get what they want from that car. But as we look at the race going through now, this is again De Los Angeles, who's working very hard, and also the riders from Once were doing pretty well. Mikel Pedera there in second place. They're keeping this race gently under control for this man, and of course for Alessandro Pataki. We'll take a break. And Welcome back. We're looking at the two leaders. They're still clear as we run down towards the finish. Just 26 kilometres to go now. Virtually a straight road into the town of Valdepeñas. And the riders have gone through the third hour now, having covered 145 kilometres in 3 hours of racing.
It really is a very rapid Vuelta a España. In fact, we're charging now down through the final few kilometres into Valdepeñas, and strangely enough, Phil, going through the record books, this is only the third time that the race has actually finished in this very interesting part of Spain. The first time was back in 1948, and it was a Belgian by the name of Frankie Heelan who won on that occasion. But as we look here at Oscar Sevilla, who's been through his hometown this morning, he probably remembers the winner in 2000 because it was a big bunch sprint, and a man by the name of Jans Koorts got the victory on that occasion.
We all know Jans very well. Oh, there we are. Look for you. Last finished 2000, Jans Koorts. We always used to think they made a misprint on his Christian name there because it's very rare to see an S on the end of the word Jan in the Dutch language, but he insists there is an S on his Christian name. I actually asked him once because I didn't believe him.
Well, this man has had a pretty good ride because after some difficult days in the opening week of the Vuelta a España, he was involved in a very nasty crash, and he's still managing to hold on to 16th place in the overall classification. And in fact, with the responsibility taken off his shoulders right now as being the team leader, he actually seems to be enjoying his Vuelta a España. The team leader for Team Kelme is Alejandro Valverde, who at 23 years of age, Bob, like Isidro Nozal, is a major revelation to everybody, I think, in this year's Vuelta.
Valverde is having a great Vuelta. He's in the blue jersey. He's in second place in the combination points, and we saw him sprint quite well the other day when Zabel won the stage. We might see him try to get up there, get a little bit closer to actually being just the inheritor. Here's an attack going from a Seiko rider right off the front, but the outright leader of the blue jersey competition, the combination.
Well, it shouldn't be too difficult to nail down which one this is. I think it's Juan Fuentes who's tried a little attack off the front there. There's only 3 of them left in. This is the rider who speaks fluent English with an Australian accent because he spent 15 years in Sydney and he watched cycling on television and he got so inspired he started racing. And he went back over to Spain.
Most certainly because he was listening to you during the commentary, I'm sure.
He did come up and tell me, I think I told you that story during the Tour de France, but he came up and actually said I was responsible for starting him cycling. And I said, what on earth are you talking about? Because I thought he was Spanish. Well, I thought he was Italian initially, of course, because he was on the Italian team and he was speaking absolutely fluent English. And it turned out he'd lived in Australia most of his life. Parents had gone back home to Barcelona. He had a wonderful last amateur season in Spain where he won virtually all of the races he rode, and Seiko took him on board, and they reckon he's a real talent.
Well, he's certainly not scared of attacking right now because we're approaching 25 kilometres to go. These two men surviving off the front on the left-hand side there, Oscar Laguna. We've seen him many, many times in the Vuelta a España on the attack. Relax Fuenlabrada, as Bob said earlier, is a team that doesn't really have a sprinter on board, and the only way they can get publicity for their team, which is one of the smaller teams in the Spanish cycling circles, is to go out on the attack and try and get themselves as much TV coverage as possible. And he certainly has done that on many occasions over the last few years.
Just looking out at the sky there, it looks a little bit stormy, but I don't think it is at all. It is a beautiful day, 82, more higher, 84, 85 degrees Fahrenheit today, in Celsius 32 degrees. And just looking here at the bunch, they've got this race a little bit more under orderly control, I feel, today. They've still got to bring back those two riders, and it looks as though Fuentes is trying to ride away on his own. Not sure this is perhaps an award, Bob, you might like to award the knucklehead of the day, perhaps, for an attack on the straight road like this.
Well, I was going to give that to a rider beforehand. It was German Nieto that got no more than about 20 meters off the front of the bike race, and he sat out there for about 10 kilometers, and he never got more than 20 meters. So at that point, it's time to go back to the group because they're not going to let you go. These riders, like Paul said, maybe a little bit of publicity, so you can't get down on the guy for that if they don't have a chance in the sprint.
Well, I'm just looking there. 4 birds in the sky. That's more than the Seiko riders down below. There's only 3 of them left. There they are. Fuentes, Pepeli and Pugazzi. They're the riders left. And these are the 2 leaders. And Pedro Diaz is in blue and Oscar Laguna is doing the work.
I'll tell you what, I don't think you can call Juan Fuentes a knucklehead, because he's a professional who's had 2 wins so far this season. One in the early part of the year in a very big Italian race called the Grand Prix of Industria, and he actually got himself a win last month as well in the Grand Prix Lodio. So he's a very good bike rider in his only his second year as a professional bike rider. He's 28 seconds behind right now. He's a very strong bike rider too. You can see he's trying to get himself across. He's concentrating on the job in hand, but I think on the front end of the main field we'll see the control coming from Alessandro Petacchi's Fassa Bortolo team. There's a lot of white jerseys on the front there. They're just trying to keep it in a controllable time gap right now, and they will accelerate as we get down to the last 10 or 15 kilometers.
Well, let's see if he gets across. It might throw a different complexion on the race. If he does, the peloton are not being disturbed from the temporary slumber here as one rider goes away to try and make up with the other 2. We will see Petacchi's boys, and no doubt the Telecom purple jerseys come to the fore soon to try and get this race back into organisation, because we're now about 27 kilometres from the line, Bob, and the sprinters will want to organise themselves.
It was also interesting to see the quick-step riders coming to the front of the bike race, chasing the most dangerous breakaway of the day so far, that contained Lombardi and Benoit Joaquin of the U.S. Postal Team. Quick-step, well, they will probably try to lead out their man Tom Boonen, who's getting a little bit closer to the very fast and speedy Zabel and the peerless sprinter of the year so far, Alessandro Petacchi. Tom Boonen, a young rider, second year as a professional, turned pro with U.S. Postal last year, went over to the Quick-Step team to learn the game from the master Johan Museu, and he's learning quite well. He's been very close on a couple of occasions to winning stages. He's solid on the climbs. He's got a quick sprint finish. He's got a tremendous amount of endurance for the long single-day classics that the Belgians love and excel at. I think we're going to see a lot of Tom Boonen in the future.
Look at the speed of this guy coming up here, and the crowd are wonderfully enthusiastic. Not quite the crowd you see on the Tour de France, but what we can see, they love their sport of cycling, and they're cheering on Fuentes here. Remember, he is a Spanish rider from Barcelona, and he's trying to get across, and he's coming across quite quickly.
Well, that car you can see just in front of him, that's not a car that is pacing him right now. Just in front of that car, that's a neutral car. The 2 leaders who've been away for some time, Laguna and Pedro Diaz, are the 2 men that he wants to catch right now. So he's actually moving across the gap. He's doing a fairly good job. But on the front end of the main field as well, there's been a reaction from the Fassa Bortolo team. And we're looking at the whole race for the moment being locked in around about a 35-second time gap.
Well, from the streets of Sydney, where he used to watch cycling on television, to doing it himself in the Tour of Spain, he now knows what it feels like to bridge a gap, because he's going to make that gap for sure. And then we're going to have 3 men up front. There's been something happening down there. Well, we'll find out when we get back. And welcome back. We're just looking down there, 22 kilometres to go of the incident just before we went to break. It looks as though they're sorting out. It is not apparent yet whether it was just a puncture, and certainly the rider in the bottom of our picture has been serviced, or whether there had been a little bit of a shunt.
Well, there's several riders now scrambling to get back in. One rider just a little bit further back. It looked like an Euskaltel jersey from this altitude, but it may well have been the orange jersey of the leader of the King of the Mountains competition, Felix Cardenas. You can see the chaos at the back end of the main field as riders scramble to get up in contact with the rest of the peloton there, but certainly I think there was a shunt off to the right-hand side of the road, and 1 or 2 riders getting caught in that, and if we can get down quite quickly we'll see if any of the big names were involved. There are the leaders up there, and in all of the confusion I would say very shortly these 2 men that we're looking at, Oscar Laguna and Pedro Diaz, are about to get caught by Fuentes, but in fact he's cracked.
Well, I thought he was coming on, as no doubt you did at home, and in fact it looks as though the legs have given a little bit and the gap has opened. The peloton is recovering from what has appeared to have been a crash. We've had no replays from our Spanish pictures, so we can't really tell you what's happened other than what you've actually seen for yourselves. This is Nozal, the leader of the Tour, as always, keeping his nose clean, out of trouble. Has a very sharp tactical brain on him, this man.
Certainly does. He's ridden exceptionally well, and I think both Bob and myself were impressed by the way he handled himself going through the Pyrenees, because that was the first indication we got that this man might have some long-term prospects, and still he continues to ride in front of the man who he regards as his true team captain, stroke I should say leader, Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano. But he's going to have a very big rendezvous tomorrow with the big climb called the Sierra de la Pandera. In the past, his teammates have lost some serious time on that big mountain. In fact, Last year, Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano lost himself 5.5 minutes on the climb up to the summit there. And Yoshiba Bolocki, just to put it into context, who was a candidate for overall victory, he lost almost 1.5 minutes to Roberto Heras. So Isidro Nozal, I think, Phil, probably wondering how his body's going to handle that climb tomorrow.
Well, they've got a mileage counter just ahead there, and an offer of a drink there to Laguna, but not required. As the riders approach 20 kilometres from the finish now, a chance for Oscar there to check over his shoulder. Well, he might still see Juan Fuentes if his eyesight's good enough, but I think Fuentes is in fact losing ground. Nearly made it, but hasn't quite got across the gap, and will be dropping back to the peloton. They're around about 40 seconds, but we haven't had a time check on them for some time. They've had the rhythm disrupted, but we're going to get a time check here now as we go under 20 kilometres to go.
Well, as they go under there, I think you can see the impetus has gone out of their pedalling action there. They've certainly not got the power they had just a few moments ago, and I think the main field will just pick them up as a matter of course. There's the man caught in the middle in no man's land right now. He got very close to the tail of that neutral service vehicle, and I thought he was going to make the junction, but as he goes under the banner indicating 20 kilometres to go, he's actually lost a bit of ground to 24 seconds we'll give him. And the main field can't be that very far behind, because they certainly are just controlling affairs. You can see, in fact, it's Once on the front, and once you've got your prey in sight like this on these long straight roads, you know just exactly how much you need to turn up the gas to pull it all back together.
You can see by the wind here on the bridge, it is quite strong now, and this is probably hurting the leaders much, but they're holding on. The gap pretty much the same, 50 seconds, and so Fuentes actually stuck in absolute halfway no man's land just now, and they think they've got it under control. Mikel Pradera is setting the pace here on the front. Now, don't forget, tomorrow we're back in the mountains. We're going to have a terrific finish on the Pandera, which may well decide the destiny of the final golden jersey when we look back a week tomorrow in hindsight. It's same-day coverage, comes to you at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and on we go to the Sierra de la Pandera. That's going to be a good day's racing, that's for sure, in the Vuelta Espana. Underneath the bridge there, all of the riders going through, and it looks as though Diaz got the sprint just then, which means that Oscar Laguna will get second, and in about 20 seconds time through the sprint point here will come little Juan Fuentes. They'll be the first 3 points in the bank, but doesn't really worry any of them, so there'll be no sprint from the bunch now from the likes of Pataki and Zabel. They'll be starting to work out their relevant positions as they approach the line, which is not all that far away now.
And it's a good finish as well, Phil, because it's a nice long straight finish around about 3 kilometres, although there is a slight uphill with 2 kilometres to go, which could advantage Eric Zabel, but I think he's going to have his work cut out to try and get past Alessandro Pataki here, because this year Pataki has got to be regarded as the sprinter on the block, and I think this man here was in fact involved in a crash just a little bit earlier on, because he's back with the race doctor, the doctor who is designated to look after everybody. This is Eladio Jimenez, one of the climbers from the ibernesto.com team, and he obviously was involved in that slight shunt at the side of the road just about 10 kilometres ago.
Well, that solved that little problem. Quite clearly somebody did fall, we don't know how many, but Jimenez has taken the opportunity to drop back and get fixed up as he races back up into the line out here. Watched by the commissaire, no problems of course. It was quite a legitimate hold on the car door there, and they come back together. The field itself getting smaller by the day. As I say, if you're just joining in, Aito Gonzalez, the winner last year, has abandoned today at around the 90 kilometre mark. He's not enjoyed the tour at all. Yesterday, not starting the time trial, was the winner of the previous year's Vuelta, Angel Casero. And in the middle of last week, we lost the double winner of the race, Alex Zula. So we've only got Roberto Heras in the race now as a previous winner, and he won it in the year 2000. Steady uphill now. This is going to hurt the breakaway, I think, more than the big field. So Pozzo de Serna, that was the third and final sprint of the day. There's his, as we saw it, Diaz Laguna Fuentes, taking away the little points there that count for the points competition. The jersey still on the shoulders of Eric Zabel, and it could swing around, of course, if Zabel gets beaten by Pataki on the line today.
Well, this man has been halfway across to the breakaway. It looked so close to the junction, but obviously, you know, it's very difficult to try at this level of the sport to ride across a gap of 35 or 40 seconds. And if you don't make it immediately, well, the better part of valor, I would say, is to go back to the main field, which is what he's decided to do right now. There's the front end of the peloton, and they will start to get angry as they get closer to the finish. They'll start to turn up the screws slowly and wait to see the organization of the team of Alessandro Patacchi, who today lost one of their main contenders for an overall victory, Aitor Gonzalez, who really has had a season that I think he wants to put behind him and just get on with it and start the preparation for next year.
This we're looking here at the sprint confirmed now as it comes in from Spanish television, the Bartol Laguna Fuentes. 17 kilometres to go now. 2 riders still out in front. The last time check we've got there is 47 seconds. But now we've got the teams getting to the front. They're looking a little bit well organised. MSS are moving up now for their man Angel Edo. So too are Kelme. And this could be quite a battle. We'll take a quick break. And welcome back. 16 kilometres to go. They're just under 40 seconds. The advantage now for Pedro Diaz and Oscar Laguna. How long do you give them, Bob?
About another 5 kilometers,
As
I
much
think.
as that?
Or the moment that the Fossa Bortolo team comes to the front and goes really hard. Here's one of the Phonak riders involved in that crash. We've got a report from the race radio that 20 men fell down.
Yeah,
quite a big
no
pile
pictures,
up.
sadly.
Sadly, we're following the breakaway at the moment when it happened. Oscar Pereiro there from the Phonak team going back for a little attention from the race doctor. You want to clean those wounds out as soon as possible so not too many germs coming in from the road film. The dust that gets kicked up as the bikers go down the road. You want to get the wounds cleaned as soon as possible, get back into the race. You can hold on to the doctor's car at that moment. I can recall one of the worst examples that I've ever seen in my life was Jeff Pierce of the 711 team, and my teammate in the Tour was actually holding on to the car door handle of the race doctor, and the doctor leaned out of the window to clean his wounds and kicked the door open, and he crashed again. And it was an absolute disaster, and Jeff Pierce was not happy about that.
I can appreciate that.
And it was a very tough guy to get back into the Tour, and he made it all the way to Paris. That was on the very first day of the bike race. At the end of the day, we were a little bit happier. Davis Finney won the stage.
The ups and downs of Bob Roll's 7-11 experiences, but of course Jeff did win a final stage into Paris, didn't he?
In the following year, in
Yeah.
1987, he won a great stage. It's an unbelievably exciting finale. Group of 15 riders got away. He snuck away from them. They couldn't catch him. Great bike racer. And my daughter's godfather, Jeff Pierce.
Well, just to finish that story off, it was on the stage into Liévin that Davis Finney got himself the stage victory there. But back to the action here, we're looking at the 2 leaders just surviving, and they are going to get caught in the next couple of kilometres because they don't have very much more than 10 or 15 seconds lead over the main field right now at 15 kilometres to go.
So that's 4 kilometres now, Bob, before the catch, right?
I'd say, yeah, about 4. So 11 Ks to go. Have they caught him?
No.
11 Ks to go, they'll make the juncture.
Okay.
Or the moment that any of the teams with a fast sprinter want to go to the front, then he'll be caught in about
You see, Bob's
500
on real good form at the moment, isn't he, Paul? He picked the winner of the time trial yesterday. He got Patacchi. Who are you picking today, Bob?
Patacchi all the way in a romp. Patacchi is
I
going to
think they just lost the first round, Bob, because it looks like these two are going to be caught a little quicker than 11 to go.
I'm not sure his form's that good because I asked him who he thought was going to win the Vuelta a Espana this year, and he said Lance Armstrong.
That was before the race started, though.
Yeah.
Okay. Armstrong, of course, now announced his retirement for the year. He did ride in the San Francisco Grand Prix, but he didn't make the finishing line. And he'll be thinking of a 6th victory in the Tour de France next year. And, of course, you can watch every inch of the route with us here on OLM. Well, the 2 boys at the front, and you can see that southwesterly wind is whipping up the dry dust around. You can't get the real impression of wind here from the commentary position, but believe me, it is extremely windy at the moment, and the riders are battling it a little bit now, and it means that they've taken the time to bring these 2 riders back. And the reason being, Bob, they know that when 2 riders are caught and they're all together, there's going to be counterattacks.
Yes, there'll be some counterattacks if they're still a long ways from the finish line. So they want to leave it to the last possible moment. Within the last 10 kilometers is ideal. And then they don't usually have to worry about some rider getting away in the last few Ks. We haven't seen it for a while, but every once in a while, a very powerful rider like Vyacheslav Ekimov has enough time trialing ability and sprinting to get away in the last few 100 meters of the race and hold off the sprinters' teams. It, generally speaking, has to be a very hard stage for that to happen because the momentum in the peloton is so incredible, especially towards the finish of a big stage like this.
Well, the wind coming more or less from the top left-hand corner of your television screen at the moment, keeping the rise in that diagonal formation. There's certainly in no rush to bring these two boys back. They're trying to hold it as long as possible, in fact, but just look at those roads. It's only in Spain you see roads like that. They are so depressing for breakaways because everybody knows where everybody else is. The two riders having a chat here, saying, well, we're wasting our time. Laguna saying, no, let's go for a little bit longer. And Pedro saying, don't be silly. Take a look over your shoulder. And here come the boys.
I tell you what, over the last 25 kilometres, there hasn't actually been a corner. The first corner these riders will see will be once they actually get into town, in the finishing town of Valdepeñas, after what has been a fairly rapid 167 kilometre stage. There you can see, always at the front, just over to the left-hand side of the main field there was the golden jersey of Isidro Nozal. He's been very attentive, always riding near the front, and it was rather nice to see him yesterday getting onto the podium with that very incredible smile on his face. And this is the counter-attack right now, trying to come off the front. But I have a feeling they'll keep it as high as possible, the teams of the sprinters, to make sure they're not outwitted on the run-in towards the line.
2 in and 2 out. 2 in and 4 out now as they start to go again. This is why the riders were reluctant to bring them back, because they know once they get together, all of the riders start to get a little bit scratchy again and try to get a gap over the sprinters. 4 riders trying to go clear here as they make the way up together. Looks like Felix Cadenas, is it? Who's coming across here? No, it's Rabobank. Well, I must confess, I've never seen Rabobank from the side. It looks as though he's almost changed his jersey there. But anyway, we've got 4 riders trying to get clear of the field, and Cadenas has got a teammate from La Barca in the breakaway. Not that he's worried about today, because there were no mountains for his King of the Mountains jersey. 4 riders and another banner. That'll be about 12 kilometres from the finish, yes, as they go under there. Okay, well, don't forget, when you finish watching the Vuelta and you're looking for something else to watch at 10 p.m, well, that's when OLN brings you the latest shows on the network. So you can tune in Monday through Wednesday, the Beach Ambush, Bragging Rights, Mysterious Encounters, and Outdoor Outtakes. And the new lineup will begin on September the 29th. That's in 9 days' time at 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. Now, we're getting some riders getting on the move here. We're just about finding who we are. Francisco Cerezo is the man from La Barca. And I think the guy there from Fuenlabrada was probably Germán Nieto.
It was indeed the previous winner of the Bonehead of the Day award. And it looks like he's going for bonus points in that competition, because the peloton is about 20 yards behind them.
Well, I'll tell you what, guys, the guy in there from Rabobank is a rider I've never mentioned this whole season, Ronald Mustaz, and I think he must be a very new professional, because he's certainly not
Everybody
been
knows
a selection.
Who he is.
Okay, tell me.
Don't we, Bob?
No, we don't. I don't think we've ever mentioned him one time in all
Born
of
in
the...
Rotterdam.
Mustaz from Rotterdam. I must confess, seeing that jersey on the side with like the diagonal white arrow there, I couldn't really seen that jersey before, or noticed it anyway. Anyway, Mustaz, now he's getting the feel of the race on the 14th day, is trying to get into a little bit of a breakaway here. He's a young Dutchman. He's come through the team Rabobank through the stages of its career, and he in fact turned professional last year. No wins yet, and he comes from Eindhoven. Now Eindhoven is on the edge of south of Limburg, which is the hilly area of Holland, often known as Little Switzerland down that way.
There's a nice group forming at the front there. Nieto, Cerezo, Galbano. Galbano, by the way, was involved in a bit of a fracas the other day with Alessandro Petacchi on the day when everybody was battling to get into that big front sprint when we went into the crosswinds. And in fact, the referees deciding not to give Alessandro Petacchi the ejection from the race, because afterwards he went and apologised to Galbano, and Petacchi on that occasion was very lucky to get away with just a 200 Swiss franc fine.
Yes, he was, because that's usually the one thing that the commissaires are very hot on. They don't tolerate fighting amongst the riders. So this will be 11 kilometres to go. Sorry about the little bit of picture breakup. I don't know why we're getting that out in this open countryside. It should be fine right now as we're running into the finish. It must be the speed dazzling the cameras today as these boys continue at this very, very high pace. And we're heading under the 11 kilometres to go. This is 10 kilometres to go maybe now, as the riders are just 6 miles from the finish. We'll take another break. And welcome back. We're looking for the 5 kilometre banner, and Eco Flores has just attacked moments after the 4 escapers were wiped out by the peloton. Now this has to be an opportunist move.
It's a good move. It's just at the right moment as well, with around about 5 kilometres to go. It could be a moment when the sprinters will pause before they really turn up the gas, and this man has certainly got the acceleration and the speed to surprise them. 53 kilometres an hour is his average speed for the moment, and he's actually going slightly uphill. He's a great talent, and the man who Bob might cause a surprise if he can just get into the outskirts of town alone.
If he can get a little bit more of a gap than that, he would stand a chance. It's 5Ks to go around about. We'll get that banner here when we come around this corner. But watch out for the crosswinds now. It's been a very strong wind direct. Up until now, they're taking a hard 90-degree right turn, and you can see the peloton fly all the way over to the right-hand side of the road.
Make a big difference
and
now,
this could
Bob.
make a huge difference. Could be quite dangerous as well. We've got some few traffic furniture out there with some islands and whatnot before we get into the town. This is going to be another thrilling finale in the Vuelta a Espana. This could be very fast. You saw the Telecom team come up to the front en masse. Eric Zabel right on the back of them. They've caught Iker Flores now, and it'll probably stay like this all the way to the finish. A big field gallop.
Now this is going to be very intriguing. They've been battling a very, very strong headwind for these last few kilometres, and we've suddenly started to change direction. And this particular right turn now, and I think that's why Flores attacked. He thought he was going to make this turn before the peloton wiped him out. He must know the area, because there'll be a wind direction change here.
Unlucky because he didn't quite make it, but there was a lot of pink jerseys on the front end of the main field, and one man I just saw from the helicopter accelerating up the left-hand side of the main field was George Hincapie. Hincapie, I feel certain must be one day or another thinking about a stage victory, and I wonder with the performance of Roberto Heras in yesterday's time trial whether or not Hincapie's going to stay in the race a little bit longer. He said he may well pull out after the climb up to Pandera. But look at that speed there, 64 kilometres an hour coming from Team Telecom. That's about 42 miles an hour right now.
Well, they've got to keep it high, of course, to stop anybody else coming off the front. This looks to me, though, it's Torsten Hickman setting the pace there, right on the front. And they've had all of their riders up here. Zabel has been best placed of the sprinters the last couple of kilometres, but you know, Pataki can soon make amends there. That long line speeding under 4 kilometres to go. And they are now in full cry, approaching 65 kilometres an hour. There's no chance, Bob, for moving up now.
No, this is going to be one long line all the way to the finish line. It's the Telecom riders in front with Zabel on their wheel, and then Fossa Bortolo all lined out behind them, and then the teams of the GC contenders trying to keep their top guys out of danger. You could open up huge gaps at these types of speeds, 60, 65 kilometers an hour. If there is a gap, you can lose a lot of time in just a couple kilometers.
Well, we believe they're looking at 3 kilometres, but the writing is so small on these banners, we're never sure until the riders know exactly where they are. And certainly at the moment, so too do the Team Telecom boys. Now watch out for the polka dot jersey. I don't see him at the moment, but the Fossa Bortolo boys are beginning to move in on the thick of the action as well.
Moving around the outside, Fossa Bortolo want to keep it up, and looked to me as if that was 2 kilometres to go. And there's a huge acceleration coming now from Fossa Bortolo. I can't see Eric Zabel at all down there, but I feel certain he must be still in with a chance. An acceleration like that must be coming from a rider like Sergei Ivanov.
Well, Ivanov or Tzato, it is Ivanov. And I tell you what, that was a terrific jump, and he's distanced the peloton here as they're trying to reorganise themselves at the back. And this is going to be desperate moments for them now, because it is a very difficult gap to be bridged, and they might get the win on Fossa, but it might be with the rider they're not expecting, as we're looking now for 1,000 metres to go.
Telecom moving up the outside. They want to control it all. That was a long attempt there by Ivanov. He's disappearing, but the effect that it has had is to stretch out the front end of the main field. In about 10th position there, you can see a lime green jersey. That's going to be Angeledo, who rides for Milanese. He'll be looking for the win as well. On the front, Telecom back in control, but there are a lot of white jerseys. It's the Pataki train right now. There in 4th position is Eric Zabel. Right on his wheel there is Freddy Rodriguez. He's also looking for the win. 1,000 metres left to go. Pataki is up into 3rd place. Zabel is in 4th. Rodriguez in 5th.
Big lead out now by Tzato, and he'll peel off and try and move over for Pataki to take up the running here, but Zabel has got the wheel too, and there's a rush through by Alessio on the right hand side of the road now with Angelo Ferland trying to get on the action. Rodriguez poised in the centre there. Tom Bonin is right there too. They've got a lot of confidence with this man. A big lead out now. Bonin perfectly positioned. Hincapie there in 2nd place. Now is this the day that Hincapie is going to give us the sprint of his life? Hincapie comes greedy, trying trying to take him on. Boonen coming on, Hincapie, and they're going for the line, and Guidi's coming clear now with Boonen in second, Hincapie, Pataki is in fourth. Here comes Alessandro Pataki with the usual run now. Nobody's going to get over Alessandro Pataki. Hincapie and Fred Rodriguez isn't going to give up. It's second for Fred, third for Zabel. What a sprint that was.
Unbelievable. How does this man do it? He can lead from the front, or he can come from the confusion of fifth or sixth position behind. For a few moments I thought he'd completely blown it. You couldn't see him. Then all of a sudden the white jersey with the blue stripe across appears on the front end of the main field. Tom Boonen panicked a little bit, inexperienced, starting his sprint a long way out there, but there's nothing you can say, there's nothing more you can say about Alessandro Pataki. There has been a split in the main field, and I would think that all of the main leaders are in the front end of the peloton. But once again, Alessandro Pataki does it. Win number 25 this year, and this is a remarkable season for this man, which he's going to put down in his record books.
Well, Bob, he's an absolutely perfect sprinter. He has been the man of the year, hasn't he?
I think that was the best sprint we've seen him to do all year. We saw him win 6 stages in the Giro. We saw him win 4 in the Tour, but I think this was his best yet. It looked like he was out of it. He slipped down from 2nd position to 10th. This was one of the longest last kilometers I think I've ever seen. But the experience coming in there, Angelo Furlan, you can see the second man on the list, very sketchy there against the banners. Pataki, watch this now. Lombardi starts to launch a sprint. George Hincapie and Tom Boonen get on his wheel. Guidi's in there. Pataki, absolutely no panic whatsoever. Touch of the brakes there. You can almost never come back from a situation like that. He had to get reorganized. It was so far to the finish line. Watch him now come into the screen on the right-hand side of the picture and just go flying past. These are some of the fastest riders in the world. Unbelievable. He sat down there for a moment, and now he's going to launch his sprint. Freddie Rodriguez did a great job there, following him all the way through, using his wheel, and there's Eric Zabel in the polka dot jersey of points leader trying to come through, but Pataki so fast, so powerful. Fred Rodriguez is now going to make one final push to the line, but he can't quite get around Alessandro Pataki. Unbelievable sprint right there.
There's no doubt this was the sprint royale of this year's Vuelta Espana. Pataki gets it over Rodriguez and Eric Zabel. Boy, and George did a great ride. I thought for the moment he was going to win that.
Well, I thought he'd got it just at the right time, but you know what? To come back from that far down, that really was quite remarkable. Sheer speed.
So 25 wins this season for Alessandro Pataki. He brings his Vuelta stage wins now in total over the years to 7. We'll take a break, come back and join us. And welcome back. Well, I think we've just seen possibly the best sprint of the season there. Absolutely fantastic. We can have a look at it again now. And Paul, you can take us through it and enjoy yourself.
I tell you what, I always enjoy a sprint. This was a very long kilometre. I reckon it took forever for these riders to get up there. Started off looking like a formality once again for Mr. Alessandro Pataki there in 3rd place behind 2 of his teammates. Eric Zabel queuing up in 3rd place. But this is the moment when all of the confusion started. Angelo Furlan and his teammates from Alessio, they were moving up through the inside there, trying to get themselves into an ideal position, and then all of a sudden there was a burst right through the middle of the field. This looks like Giovanni Lombardi wanted to come through, but there was George Hincapie ready to take over. But this was all happening at 500 metres to go. Tom Boonen thought, well, this is my turn to try and get the victory, but Bob, at the moment like this, it looked to me as if Alessandro Pataki had been swept away.
It looked like he was way down. He's not even in our screen right now, and it took him a long time to get back to the front, but once he did, it was a formality all the way the line, accelerating. What a burst of speed by the best man in the sprints this year, Alessandro Pataki.
Well, he is fearsomely fast, and there's the result. Getting in behind him, Fred Rodriguez, Eric Zabel, Thomas Bruun getting a place there for CSC, the Danish rider, and Tom Boonen fading there, but only as far back as 5th. And holding on. Well, what about the big boys in the race? Well, they all watched each other, finished almost alongside each other there. The top 3, Erasmo Zaldi Galdiano and Beltran and Mancebo, also in the front half of the split and losing no time, because they did split time, the big peloton, so they were wise to stay together. But Alessandro Pataki now has won the stage, and it means he's gone equal on points now with Eric Zabel, who finished 3rd. Pataki will wear the polka dot jersey tomorrow, because he has 4 stage wins to Eric Zabel's 2, and on count back it means he would win the jersey if the Vuelta were to end today, but of course it doesn't. We have exactly a week to go tomorrow. So let's have a look now at the Pacific Live general classification. Nozal, no change at all because they all managed to hang on to each other's racing jersey in that sprint. Galdiano is second at 3:03, Heras 5:13, Beltran and Mancebo. The time gap's important now as we head to the mountains, of course. Valverde is still there too, Rasmussen. No change whatsoever in the overall classification. All of the leaders paying big attention in that finish. This man reaches higher to the sky every time he pulls on a leader's jersey. And another golden jersey for him now. And tomorrow, of course, another big test. I must say, the gentleman on the right must be a pop star. He's so well dressed. But he's giving a yellow jersey, a golden jersey, there to Nozal, who is looking more relaxed as these days go on. So, Paul, a big day out for him tomorrow because we've said it a few times, but first of all, it was the time trial test, which he won, then the Pyrenees, which he did well. Now he's going back into the mountains, having won the time trial only yesterday.
I tell you what, it's going to be a huge mountaintop finish, and although the final climb of the day is only around about 8 kilometres, there's 25 kilometres of climbing beforehand to set it up. I think it's going to be very important for Roberto Heras and for the US Postal Service. Heras was the winner here last year on that occasion, and he put huge time gaps between himself and the rest of the other riders in the main field. Igor Gonzalez de Galdiano last year lost 5 minutes and 40 seconds on the slopes of this climb. The big question mark, though, is the man who leads the bike race, Isidro Nozal. He's been a solid leader so far. I wonder if he will be next.
Yes, and don't forget, Gonzalez de Galdiano at least will be able to tell him exactly where that mountain hurts him, and he'll be able to look after him, I think, as we get to that climb. Tough day, nonetheless, and don't forget, we're with you tomorrow afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern, but there is the stage tomorrow. Valdepeñas, we say goodbye to Valdepeñas and head to Sierra de la Pandera. The hills come towards the end. There's a little second category climb, the Alto de los Vilares, which was a stepping stone up to the top of the mountain itself. 172 kilometres, reasonably long stage. Same day coverage, of course, the second to last Sunday of the Vuelta Espana. We'll be with you at 3 p.m. Eastern time. That's midday on the west coast. And of course, as I say, the big decisions now will be made by ONCE, but they've got to put all of their weight, I believe, behind the man of the moment. Keep up to date with all what happens on OLM by coming and visiting us on olmtv.com. So that's another most interesting day. At least Alessandro Patacchi will think so. Who will be in the golden jersey tomorrow? Find out when you join us again at 3 p.m. tomorrow afternoon on the Eastern Time. For all the boys, I'm Phil Liggett saying, see you tomorrow.